Welcome everybody to the Lake Bluff Board of Trustees meeting. It is November 23rd and the year is 2020. Could we have a roll call?
Trustee Ankerman.
Here.
Trustee Sherlock.
Here.
Trustee Dewart.
Here.
Trustee Markey.
Here.
Trustee Meyer.
Here.
Trustee Toll.
Here.
All right, as I've had to do in the past, due to the COVID-19 emergency, in accordance with Section 7E of the Open Meetings Act, this meeting will be held primarily virtually. At least one representative from the village will be present in Village Hall boardroom, and the virtual meeting will be simulcast for members of the public who do not wish to view the virtual meeting from another location. Pursuant to the executive orders issued by the governor, the number of people who may gather at Village Hall for the meeting is limited due to the mandated social distancing guidelines and limitations on gatherings. Accordingly, the opportunity to view the virtual meeting at Village Hall will be available on a first-come, first-served basis. Most people, if they are interested, may view and participate in the meeting via online at lakebluff.org, virtual meeting, or dial in at 312-626-6799. All right. With that, can we have the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I'll stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag
of the
to the
United States
of America,
and to the
the
republic
republic for which
for which
it
it
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
with
liberty
liberty,
and
justice for all.
All right, we have at this point the consideration of the minutes of the November 9th, 2020 regular meeting. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Okay, and that was that Mr. Charlo, and then seconded by Mr. Markey?
This is Mrs. Markey, not me.
Okay. Oh, all right, Mr. Markey, okay, and then seconded by?
Second.
Mr. Toll, thank you. Any corrections, additions to the minutes? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Trustee Sherlock.
Aye.
Trustee Dewart.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
At this time, we allow 15 minutes for anyone to speak on anything that may on their mind that is not on tonight's agenda. Do we have anybody that wishes to do so? Drew, is there anybody that has signaled that they would like to speak?
There was no one at Village Hall, and no one has raised their hand in the virtual meeting.
Okay, and I'm assuming no is the answer to that one. Order of the meeting, I haven't had any request to change that order of the meeting. We'll go down to 6A, the Village Finance Report. Starting with the Warrant Report for November 10th through November 23rd, 2020, and the September 2020 payroll expenditures. Expenditures of village funds for payment, excuse me, do I have a motion to accept? Thank you, Mr. Meyer.
So moved.
And second, please.
Second.
Mr. Charlot. Expenditures of village funds for payment of invoices in the amount of $202,743.38 for November 10th and 23rd. Expenditures of village funds for payment of payroll in the amount of $283,460.33 for October 2020, which means a total expenditure of $486,403.71. Are there any questions, comments regarding the warrant report, particularly to our treasurer, to our finance director? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Sherlock.
Aye.
Trustee Dewart.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
We have the October 2020 finance report. Do I have a motion to accept this report?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Charlo and second by Ms. Ankerman. Am I correct on that?
I am not. I did
Yes.
not speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought your hand was up. Put my glasses on, I might be better. I'm sorry. All right, that was Mr. Toll. Thank you. All righty, I would ask at this time for an update of the village's finances by our finance director.
Sure. Some noteworthy items found in the monthly report included sales tax revenues received in fiscal year 21, May through October, of $1,589,503, which are $170,833 or 9.7% less than fiscal year 20 receipts. Building permit revenue for fiscal year 21, May through October, is $152,380 or $67,930 less than the same reporting period last fiscal year. General fund total revenues of $6,410,350 are $429,738 or 6.3% less than fiscal year 20 May through October revenues. The largest declines are in sales tax revenue of $157,915, property tax revenue $132,143. This is due to payment extension dates, of which $138,000 was received in November. Permits and licenses $118,455, and interest earnings of $49,793. The FY21 current expenditures are consistent with or less than budgeted. The May through October expenditures of $4,537,213 are $297,588 less than the expenditures for the same period in fiscal year 20. CARES Act grant monies in the amount of $250,269 were received on November 19th and will be reflected in the November financial report. Budgetary information: to address the financial uncertainty of the COVID-19 pandemic, the village adopted a budget that incorporated numerous reductions in revenues and expenditures. Sales and income tax expectations were reduced by $749,356. A freeze of $180,000 in general fund transfers to the vehicle replacement fund was enacted. A reversal of the $410,000 interfund transfers was approved. Expenditures were reduced in the general fund by $639,600, operational and capital improvements, and fiscal year 21 transfers from the general fund were decreased by $630,000.
Thank you. Any questions for our finance director? I'm glad to see that we finally received the CARES money on the 19th. I know that many municipalities up until very recently had also not received it, so we had some concerns. So I'm glad that it's finally in our coffers. Okay.
Bettina, I had a question just about the, when we look at what we budgeted to happen with sales and income tax being reduced by about $750,000. Look at some of the detailed line items that you've described so far year to date. It sounds like we are tracking to be somewhat less than that, kind of just projecting where we might be. Does that sound accurate?
So you mean the percentage of decline is less than anticipated?
Yes.
Yes, I would say to date that's a true statement. Some of the sales tax revenues, because state did allow people to file late, could be late filers in different periods of time, and that could level off in the months to come. So we'll just have to wait and see. But for right now, it looks like there has been a steady incline and a good source of revenue returning.
Right. And how would vehicle sales impact just the big picture? Where do we see us right now?
So from what I've heard overall, vehicle sales have been good. I do have some charted data that I can send over to you that will show you, but it's based on sales tax information, which is in arrears, because the state doesn't post that information as quickly as I'd like to be able to see. But from what I have seen through July, the numbers were good.
And to your question,
Second
Trustee
quarter.
Inkerman, the sales tax from autos is very key to our revenue streams, given that a third of the village's revenue is sales tax and 2/3 of that third is auto related. So
So it's good to see that that's rebounding a little bit.
it's bouncing the right way. Hopefully it's sustained, right?
Right.
Right.
Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Dort.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Trustee Charlo.
Aye.
All right, we are ready for the village administrator's report. I have a couple of juicy items on there. You want to elaborate, Drew?
Sure. And love the descriptor juicy. So the first one on there is a request from the North Shore Water Reclamation District, which are asking for a fee waiver related to their planned armoring of their facility down at the Sunrise Beach. So in the packet was a letter requesting that relief. They cite a number of reasons for the relief, and if not granted by the board, they would face a permit fee of just under $12,000. And in the past, the village board has asked, and this is really at the guidance of the finance committee, that they would only consider requests for fee waivers that would exceed $1,000, and that certainly falls under that category. So happy to answer any questions. I know that Tom Swarthout, who is our elected representative from the North Shore Water Reclamation District, is on the call, as is their special projects manager, Steve Waters. I don't know if they have, I think they'd have a few things to say, so I'm gonna allow them to talk, and then you guys can have a conversation. So Tom, if you can, yep, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you, Drew, and thank you, trustees and Madam President. We're enthused, excited, and energized about being able to move forward on the additional revetments that we'll be adding to Lake Bluff Beach. We've been working closely with the village on that matter. As you may know, our other trustees approved a nearly $500,000 expenditure to add additional rocks down on the lakefront. In fact, the bids came in at a point where we were able to add an additional funds of almost $100,000 to extend the revetments out approximately 100 feet. Doesn't really benefit the protection of our two pump houses, but we felt it was a benefit to the village, and certainly the beach. Will be able to enhance that beach by bringing in additional sand. And for those reasons and others, we think that we ought to be able to receive that waiver. Steve is on the call. I think he could go into specifics about the need, and I would turn it over to Steve, and I'd follow up with some additional comments. Steve, are you there? Drew,
Steve should be able to speak. Yep, you're there. Steve, you should be able to speak as well. Okay. Unless your volume's down on your computer or your phone.
Well, I'll keep going then.
Go ahead.
We've had, as some of you may know, we've had a number of meetings this summer and into the fall about trying to coordinate our activities with the future plans that the village and the park district have for the beach, and this is all kind of culminated. There was a little give and take with the other trustees, and eventually supported my position to add additional funds to essentially capture some additional sand that would be part of the project. So it may not essentially benefit the North Shore Water Reclamation District in protection of our needed facility, but we certainly wanted to participate and contribute So that activity will start fairly soon. Trying to coordinate that now with Drew and the team at the village. And Drew, you may want to add anything for that.
Sure. And I mentioned this in my memo to the board. Excuse me, but the North Shore Water Reclamation District bid out the project. They awarded it to Keno Construction, which happens to be the same contractor the Beans had selected for their project. So there's some good luck in the coordination of that for everyone, I think. And the fewer contractors doing the work and the fewer, maybe they can combine some trips. They'll be occurring at a very similar time schedule. So I think that was one of the things that was, that we lucked out, everybody lucked out with. The other element of this, just to kind of, again, establish the reason behind this, I think everybody knows, is that these very high lake levels combined with these weather events is the wave action is taking a toll on the parking lot, and the water is coming in very close to the pump house. And so the idea that they'll add additional stone along that revetment, essentially along the parallel to the lake, that will be another few feet higher, and again should protect those facilities. And then again on the north side, actually jetting directly out into the water, which will stop the wave action coming in from that direction, which will benefit the Park District's facilities as well, in terms of, as North Shore Water Reclamation District Trustee Swarthout mentioned, that it'll capture sand in that area, and so it's good for the beach in addition to protecting the facility. So, and and the method and means to this project, they're not barging it in, it's over the road. I think the village board has talked about, again, when they establish their fee schedule for the building permits, to try to capture monies for impact to our roads by going to 3% from the normal 1%, which is a commonly charged rate for building construction permit fees. And so the idea of this, the permit fee will certainly go to what the village is trying to cover. At the same time, the North Shore Water Reclamation District is making a case that this is the good for the general public, including the villages, and given that we're the owners of the property, that where they've established their facilities, and protecting the Park District's facilities as well. So I don't know if Steve, I see you've been trying to get on the call. Are you able to comment as well? I'll take that as a no.
I have to say our engineers are very good at saving money, but not really good at technology.
All right.
No, I would kid them. For many years, for almost a decade and a half, the North Shore Water Reclamation District didn't have any debt. We used to build up a reserve, and I used to make the claim that because it's run by professional engineers, and engineers by nature never design a 3-horse pump when a 1-horse pump will do the job. But in terms of technology, video technology, we lack that competency.
Trustee Swarthout?
So, and as Drew knows, I've been involved in a number of projects in and around Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, and a comparable project, I think, certainly much greater in scope, is Lake Forest Hospital. And the North Shore Water Reclamation District waived a $400,000 hookup fee because we made the case, and I kind of was wearing both hats at the time, that hookup fee was really a replacement of the existing facility. And as a needed asset to the community, we felt that it was something that was warranted. So in the same spirit, we think that we've really stepped up to try to preserve that beach in these very challenging times with lake level, and for that reasons we're asking for that waiver.
Tom, do you know if go ahead.
I was just going to ask, the North Shore Water Reclamation District, I'm not sure of the geography that feeds into that district. It obviously includes the village of Lake Bluff, but what else is included in that district?
Yeah, I would, the district generally speaking is from Lake Cook Road, so all of Lake County all the way to the Wisconsin border, and generally from the tri-state to the east, though we do have extensive hookups into Grays Lake, and we have an arrangement with the county of Lake to serve some of their other municipalities. So it's fairly large. We're the second largest district in the state, serving almost 500,000 people.
Though this pumping station is dedicated for Lake Bluff?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, back in time, 100 plus years ago, everything kind of was pitched, sanitary lines were pitched towards the lake, and they had multiple facilities up and down the North Shore that would essentially filter the water and then discharge it into Lake Michigan. Probably not a good idea in today's world, so that water still is all pitched in that direction, goes down to the lake, and then is pumped up, and it goes to the branch, close to the north branch, and then it is from the facility in the village of Lake Bluff as well as Lake Forest is pumped all the way to Highland Park, where it is filtered to that facility that's a little north of the Botanical Gardens. So a lot of engineering involved, but, and as Drew knows, our long-term goal would be to put a holding tank down on the lake, very similar to what we did in Lake Forest. If anybody's been down to Lake Forest Beach, we have a pumping house down there as well, but there's a 2 million gallon tank that's underneath the parking lot. Our budget, our future budget is to do the same in Lake Bluff, a tank that would be half that size, that would hold any sewage if there was a fault in the line. And at that time, we really want to kind of dress up those very sad-looking buildings that are obnoxious and just don't meet the standards of either Lake Forest or Lake Bluff. And in the interim, Drew has seen some renderings where we'd actually put some, I call them party decks on top of those roofs to facilitate events and then be able to get to those two facilities on grade from the road that we use now to get to the facility. By the way, in this whole operation, we've actually budgeted a redoing of that parking lot down on the lake as well, which is getting torn up on some of the storms that we've just recently had.
I have two related questions. The groin that is just north of your pumping facility, is that yours, or is that quote unquote yours, or is that belong to the Park District?
I believe that belongs to the Park District, but that's the groin that we are going to enhance. So that's going to double in width and go up about 3 feet and extend out 100 feet. So that's the additional addendum that we were able to take. I mean, we were really surprised that the bids came in to where they are, and I know Drew would like us to bring all that stone in on helicopters, but it's just really not possible.
That's a true statement.
There are no barge. Yeah, and I know Drew is going to be pushing the barge thing. It's just not. It's not possible.
And on a related, just to clarify, I think Trustee Dewart's question about ownership of the groins, I think the jetties that are down there, actually almost all of them were installed by the North Shore Water Reclamation District. They then the sanitary district, but that was done largely in the 70s and the 80s, mostly to protect their assets, to include the pumping facility and the road going down the hillside.
Okay.
And let me just jump one more time, and Drew also knows that there's been discussion with the Park District on trying to integrate that with this project with their future endeavors. And we've been assured by our engineers, who are also being hired by the Park District, that the stones that we're going to deliver on the lakefront can be relocated in the future if we wanted to extend any of those revetments out into the lakefront a little farther. A stone that maybe be the size of a car can be actually relocated anywhere. So just getting them down to the lakefront, I think, is a huge benefit now and in the future. And we've been fortunate that we haven't had the storms of late, but we want to be able to get them down and beat the season, which is coming upon us very, very soon.
And just to clarify one more time, the expectation that the North Shore Water Reclamation District and the Park District would work together on those improvements.
I have a question about the mean to bring the stones. Village Administrator Irving said that they would come down the road from the village. That's going to be a lot of stones to bring down to the beach. Will the road leading to the beach be able to sustain that effort?
Jeff Hansen, would you answer that question to the best of your ability based off the information we have from John Keno and the North Shore Water Reclamation District.
Yeah, Drew, I'm sorry, that froze up on me there for just a minute. Was the question, what is the route?
The question is,
my question, Chef, was, will the route, I mean, will the hill, the road down the hill resist or be okay bringing that much stone to the bottom of the hill? Will that road be damaged in the long run?
Yeah, that's hard to say for certain. That road is not in the best shape going down the hill. I don't think the weight itself is going to be a particular problem for it. It just sometimes it deals with the time of the season and how much water is in the subbase. I don't think it will be destroyed, but it certainly could crack a little more. It's not in the best shape as it is. If they are moving during freeze-thaw cycles, it could get worse due to that.
Who owns the road, and is the, I believe it's owned, if you will, by the waste agency, and I presume that on completion of the project, they will have to restore it. Is that correct?
the road
There's
is,
no particular requirement other than, I believe the road is owned, and Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, owned by the Park District, but maintained by the...
There we go.
Yeah, it's a Park District road.
But maintenance is the responsibility of...
the Reclamation District.
Okay.
I heard Tom say that they were going to resurface the lot, but it wasn't clear to me if their plans, what their plans are with respect to the access road.
Well, those are two great questions, and I think it would be our intention to get some clarity on the future tank. For those who don't know, we do have plans to put that underground tank underneath that parking lot, and so if that was to move forward fairly quickly in the next year, then we would probably hold off on the restoration of that road. If not, it would be our obligation to restore that road, clearly, especially with dozens of trucks, driving down there. So there's no question that we would take on those funds.
How do we memorialize that?
I'm sure it's in a document. If not, I'm sure your fine city manager will come up with one.
Okay, is there any other questions?
Well, I think for my part, what I would say is, first, Tom, thank you very much for your efforts. And there really is no more important thing that we're dealing with now in terms of the lakefront than stabilizing it. And certainly we have a lot of challenges down there, and I think you're bringing a benefit here, one that's greatly appreciated, and it seems, at least to me, to be a fair trade-off on these permitting fees. So grateful for what you're doing, and I would support the request for the waiver of the fee. Thank you.
I have one more question to Tom. I happen to be also on the board of the Lake Bluff Yacht Club, and from the Yacht Club standpoint, we do not have a sense to when that work would occur. We have about 180 watercrafts down there, including sailboats and everything else, but mostly sailboats. And we do not have a communication from your organization, Tom. It would be great to have, I'm speaking from a Lake Bluff Yacht Club right now, it would be great to have a Yacht Club being informed as well.
We'll certainly include you in future discussions and meetings. I think we'll probably have a pre-construction meeting that may have already occurred that I wasn't included in, but we certainly want to be good neighbors, and we'd love to get this activity going now, so it is available. The entire lakefront is available in the spring for all the residents.
Thank you.
The only other comment I have, Drew, is consistent with similar requests that we've had. We have abated these fees, typically abated them, but with the proviso that any out-of-pocket costs would be borne yet by the petitioner. I would be good with that. I think it's probably important to be consistent across that whether it's the water agency, whether it's or waste agency, whether it's JAWA, other agencies with whom we've worked recently. We've tried to be pretty consistent about that language, and I would feel comfortable including that in the proposal.
And I certainly don't have a problem with that. I guess I would ask Drew, what's the potential scope of what those out-of-pockets would be, if any?
At this point, I'm not anticipating, I think this would all be reviewed in-house. Not anticipating any special extraordinary coastal engineering analysis or the like at this point, but I guess it's possible. So certainly doesn't hurt, protects the village.
All right, anybody else? First of all, Tom, thank you very, very much. I know that you have worked closely with the village, the Park District on this for months, on this, trying to get this, and it doesn't go unnoticed. And thank you very, very, very much. You certainly are keeping up the fine tradition of all the Swarthouts that have worked with Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. So we thank you very much for that. I need a motion.
So moved. So moved.
All right.
Second.
Okay. Second, was that Mr. Toll, and seconded by Mr. Meyer. Any more questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Trustee Sherlow.
Aye.
Trustee Dewart.
Aye.
All right, Drew, you have another part to your comments for the evening?
Yes, ma'am. I actually have two. One is on the agenda, one's not, but the next item, 7B, is an update on a workshop that was held on Wednesday of last week at the Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals. They had a workshop conversation, if you will, regarding a proposed two-lot subdivision of the former Arden Shores Children and Family Services property up along the lake, just south and contiguous to the Shore Acres Golf Club. There is a buyer that's interested in splitting the property and using the western 18 or so acres to be sold to the golf club and to be used as to expand their golf practice facility. And the remaining 7 and change of acres would be utilized for a new single-family home estate with 2 cottages. And that's really why I bring it to your attention tonight. The workshop was, I would say, positively received by those participating in the meeting, and we expect them to make application first thing in the new year, and to be heard in January at the PCCBA for a hearing to seek approval for that subdivision and the zoning relief necessary. And one element of that includes actually getting approval for those accessory dwelling units that's currently not allowed. You're not allowed to have any more than 1 single family or 1 dwelling per zoning lot. They would be looking for 3. I would say that the intensity of development here, where it's only 1 lot, when as of right they can do up to 5 or 6. But the idea of them only coming in for 1 lot, I think the PCCBA was looking at this very favorably and was looking for a way to recommend relief on the accessory dwelling units. And again, I just wanted to call that to your attention to see if there was any heartburn. If there was, then we can relay that back to the buyer. But if there's not, then you'll see this early in the next year. So if there are no yeah.
No heartburn, Drew.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as this is considered as part of estate zoning, I certainly don't see an issue. I would be cautious about making this, stretching this into other zoning areas.
Noted. Thank you. Any other comments?
I would support that move wholeheartedly, Drew.
Thank you.
I think this is a great project for a piece of property that's been vacant for many years. And it's a wonderful use.
Yeah, there's been many other workshops on this project, and most of them were in the area from 6 to 12 units for the site. So
I was just going to say, given the density or lack of density, it makes sense.
Drew, I had one sort of parenthetical question, and that is some of the areas up in that area, in that part of the village, are well served, and some of them are not well served by fire hydrants and whatnot. Will this development be fully served by hydrants? In other words, the department wouldn't have to run a couple thousand feet of hose from the last hydrant all the way out to the new home. Would that be correct? I guess that's a concern that I have.
Yeah, I would say good news, bad news. Bad news, it is not well served by existing infrastructure. There are no water mains nearby, no hydrants, no public hydrants nearby. However, the good news would be, because this is new construction, they would have to create a fire suppression system for the home, sprinklers, and they would have to create a vessel that would have adequate volume of water on site to maintain an adequate fire flow. So for that purpose of having sprinklers. But there isn't infrastructure close by, and so it'll be a well and septic.
Okay.
Which again feeds to the idea of a low density development, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else, Drew, for the?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
One
more item that's not on the agenda. I just wanted to note that last week I copied the village board on the letter that was sent by Village President O'Hara and myself to AbbVie regarding their recent hearing at Lake County's Zoning Board of Appeals, where they were seeking a conditional use permit to establish a helipad on the property on Atkinson Road, just south of the main Abbott corporate campus. Again, this is a helipad exclusively for AbbVie and their contractors and consultants, and only their needs, not Abbott's. Which I thought was actually a surprise to me that Abbott didn't have already an existing facility, a helipad within their corporate campus. But nonetheless, AbbVie is sharing property there and is looking for their own helipad. The letter basically says we're hopeful that even though they did get conditional approval from the county, that they explore an alternative location on the north, which we believe is preferred for a handful of reasons. Predominantly, it should offer the same amount of safety that their current location that they've identified. It should meet their business needs, and also, I'm sorry?
Sorry.
Is anybody else hearing that feedback, or is that just me? Anyway.
No, I heard that too.
The last piece was that a northern location would also be furthest away from any residential areas, whether they be Green Oaks, unincorporated Lake County, or Lake Bluff. Another item that really was at the core of this was the lack of communication between the village and AbbVie. Granted, AbbVie's headquarters are not within the corporate boundaries of Lake Bluff, but we're very close. Many people from who work at AbbVie call Lake Bluff home. And they were a significant, if not the most significant employer, one of the most significant employers in Lake County. So we would hope we'd have a more important place at their communication center and when they come to land uses of note that impact the village. And I guess all that feeds into the final comment in the letter, which is really hoping for regular information exchanges between us and them and trying to set that up in the future. But that's what I wanted to share. We sent that letter to AbbVie's CEO, the Lake County Board Chair, Sandy Hart, the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals for Lake County, as well as the head of planning and building for the county. So I just wanted to share that. Happy to answer any questions about that as well.
Drew, I just had a really quick question, Drew, about the current location that they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So will it be relatively detrimental to people in the sanctuary, or is it?
It's frankly closer to unincorporated Lake County residents, and then folks in Green Oaks, and then to people in the sanctuary, I would say, in my impression. Trustee Ankerman obviously lives in the sanctuary and may have a different opinion, but those were geographically, those were the closest residences if you were looking at it from a bird's eye view.
And do we have any idea of the frequency of how often it's used? Like, is it 10 times a day? Do we have any idea on that, or have they just not shared any of that information?
No, they had that as part of their application. Look at my notes. And trustee Inkerman probably knows this at the top of your head, but it was like 2 to 3 times a day during Monday through Friday, with a few more on Friday. There were going to be no, and it was really from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and nothing on the weekends or holidays. That's what they had pitched in the meeting, and there were really they have to, as part of one of the conditions of their approval is that there's a report out the quantity of flights. The county did not ask them to report on the time of day, but they did ask them on the quantity of flights that they're taking as a check periodically on making sure they're meeting the standards. But the conditional use permit, that was the limit of the standards, or I'm sorry, the conditions they placed on it.
The estimate by their own numbers was over 1,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say thank you to the village for that letter, just kind of highlighting the importance of clear communication and early communication, so that any input that we might have might be taken at a point in time that it could be meaningfully considered.
Drew, anything else?
That's all I have. Well, you know what? That's not true. I'll give one more if that's all right. I'm sorry to dominate tonight's meeting. Last Friday, there were new Tier 3 mitigations that went, COVID restrictions that went into place. We sent a note out to our local restaurants and others to remind them of these new mitigation strategies with the hopes of trying to tampen down the spread of COVID-19. We can hope for voluntary compliance, and we left that with our restaurants, but also advise them that we would be enforcing those the governor's orders and restrictions in that regard. And we've repeatedly sent out messages to the community at large about trying to adhere to the best that they can to the COVID restrictions and mitigations, and with the hopes of improving public health, and also at the same time reminding them to please shop local and support their local restaurants and businesses as we get into the holiday shopping season. So that would be it.
Okay. Is there anything else?
No, ma'am.
That's it. All right. Okay. Village Attorney's report.
Nothing to report tonight, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Village President's report. On the without being tiresome again, respectfully ask for a continuation of the declaration of emergency for the village of Lake Bluff related to the COVID-19 emergency. So, which we have done since March 18th, and then had it renewed subsequently at every village board meeting since then. This is a consideration, and I can get a. Do I have a motion to do that, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Ankerman. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Meyer. Roll call, please.
Tim Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
All right.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Trustee Sherlock.
Aye.
Trustee Dewart.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Madam President,
Yes.
I'm not certain
I
if
thought
you're.
you were done.
I know. I'm sorry. I didn't know if you were done with your report. If you're not, but if you're not, when you conclude your report, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there's a gentleman on the phone, Mr. Mark Pruitt, who's here for item number 17, which is way down the agenda,
right.
and I didn't see him earlier.
I can move that. I can certainly, when I'm done, I will be happy to move that up. All right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, no problem. Second thing is a couple of things. We want to wish everybody a safe and as happy as possible Thanksgiving this upcoming Thursday. We actually do have an awful lot to be thankful for, and I hope that we all contemplate that over this holiday season. And the other thing is that Saturday, December 5th, we will be doing It's a Wonderful Life in Lake Bluff again on a little bit of a truncated version, but it's definitely going to go on. And that, of course, opens the celebration for our entire holiday shopping and dining season that we have. And one of the couple of items, there's some good items that will be happening that day. There's going to be a story walk, which is a rather unique thing, sponsored by the library. 14 storefront windows featuring children's books, Snowman in the Night. So as you progress down the street, there'll be a synopsis of this part of the story will be at each of the windows. Also, books signed by the author of that book, that children's book, will be for sale at Floatstone, and that's from the Lake Forest Bookstore. We'll be doing that. We have a snowman ice sculpture where you may be allowed to take selfies. A 5-foot-tall ice snowman, which is a courtesy of the Lake Forest Bank and Trust, and that will start at 1:30 p.m. We also have the Lake Bluff 125 Quasqui Centennial pop-up store at the market. And you'll be picking up some, if you'd like, many items available to celebrate our 125th anniversary. And there are some great gifts for all ages there. Also, food and beverage specials throughout the town during the day. So it's a great place to come down and see it. And then we'll culminate at 5 p.m. as we have done in the past, except it will not be a gathering, but it will take place, which will be the official turning on the lights for the holiday tree and the gazebo and the village hall. And of course, our famous orbs. So it should still be a wonderful day, and hope everybody will enjoy that. All right, moving on from that, like a acceptance of the correspondence, which was delivered to the Village Board of Trustees and informational reports November 6th and November 13th. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
A second, as I miss, first by Ms. Marquis, and a second. Second by Mr. Toll. Thank you. All right. Roll call, please.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Trustee Sherlock.
Aye.
Trustee Dewart.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
All right. Due to a request, we will now move item number 17 up to the front. And that is a public hearing to consider amendments to the village's plan of operation and governance for its electricity aggregation program. This will be the first of 2 hearings, and that we will be conducting a public hearing on this. To give a little background, in March of 2012, following a successful referendum, the Board of Trustees established an opt-out electrical aggregation program. As you may recall, electrical aggregation allows the village to select an alternate supplier for the village's residential and small commercial electricity customers. Over the past several years, the village has cooperated with the municipalities of Deerfield, Glencoe, Highland Park, Lake Forest, Northbrook, Park Ridge, and Skokie to cooperatively solicit proposals as the North Shore Electricity Aggregation Consortium. Members of the consortium used their aggregation authority to enter into agreements in 2012 to 2015 and 2016 to 2017 with alternate suppliers, and by doing so generated cost savings. However, aggregation ended in 2017 when cost savings are no longer achievable. Since 2017, members of the consortium have monitored the market and have engaged in any other energy policy efforts, including the Elgin Solar Facility and the village's community solar program. The consortium members have developed a new aggregation model that generates savings by moving some, but not all, residents to an alternate provider. The generated savings can then be used as a cash pool by the municipality for other purposes. The new model assumes that these funds would be used to purchase renewable energy credits that effectively increases the community's use of renewable resources to fulfill energy demands. Some consortium municipalities are considering directing these funds to sustainability programs or other initiatives. In order to engage in this new aggregation effort, the village must amend its aggregate plan of operation and government, as well as the intergovernmental agreement among the members of the consortium. Amending the plan of operation requires 2 consecutive public hearings before adoption. Monday night is the first. Following adoption of the amendment, the consortium will conduct a request for proposals, and the village will be able to consider accepting the winning proposal in the first quarter of 2021. We will now conduct on this day the public hearing, and there will be no adoption until our December 14th meeting. All right. Did we have someone from I shouldn't say audience, but somebody would like to speak to this?
Yeah, Madam President, we have a brief presentation, and Mark Pruitt, who is the former head of the Illinois Power Agency, he's the consultant that has assisted the village as well as the North Shore Electricity Aggregation Consortium on topics like this over the years. So Glenn, can you bring up the presentation, please?
Okay, good.
So this is going to be a group effort. Hey, Mark.
Good evening.
It's great that Mark's on the call. This is not as simple. Go ahead and start the presentation, Glenn. Is our first aggregation 1.0, but just a little context for everybody. This gets back to the village. Village's strategic plan, as everything else we do, is linked back to that blueprint, but we're looking to leverage our existing committees to facilitate and support interagency environmental initiatives and convene partners and peers to champion and create leading edge practices. This certainly qualifies for that. Additionally, the sustainability plan is a little more direct in that it's asking the village to consider an optional program to allow residents to participate in the purchase of electricity from renewable sources if aggregation makes sense again, and this is a version of that. So next slide, please. Yeah. So again, back in 2012, the village had a referendum about starting this aggregation. If you remember, it was an opt-out, and we went out to market to find an alternate supplier for energy, and we did this as part of our 8-member consortium, and we did it not once but twice. Where the village ultimately saved our residents $1.2 million. Please go ahead to the next slide. And again, it moved all our customers. There were a few opt-outs, and certain people were ineligible, and this really spoke to residential customers as well as very small business that also qualified. But again, we were able to give money directly back to customers through reduced rates. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Glenn to move forward.
Certainly. So, and I think I hope what we're talking about tonight is simple, but just in case we want to explain it in detail. So in aggregation 1.0, ComEd sees all customers, treats all customers the same. Everyone is charged a flat rate per kilowatt hour. In some cases, other providers will be able to fulfill the electricity needs of some customers more cheaply. In some cases, that might be more expensive. If you're an individual customer, you can perhaps get exposure to the same market by opting into ComEd's hourly pricing or by choosing a different provider. But aggregation 1.0 worked when the total cost of all of our customers, moving them over, was less than ComEd. And so that was true for a while. That was true at the inception of our work in aggregation. As the village administrator mentioned, that yielded $1.2 million in savings for Lake Bluff residents, $36 million in savings across NSEAC. That was in our first contract term, and there was a bit more savings in the second contract term. But as the environment ComEd operated in changed, as ComEd's ability to deliver supply became more cost competitive, it made less sense for us to package up our demand in this way and give it to someone else. We haven't operated aggregation in the village or in any NSCAC member community since May 2017, just because there hasn't been a guaranteed way to deliver price savings in that time. What we're looking at now, though, is a way to still use that aggregation authority to deliver savings just in a different way. So in aggregation 1.0, I'm really going to skip this slide for brevity, but in aggregation 1.0, again, we bring all of our customers over to a different provider. In aggregation 2.0, we're a bit more sophisticated. We look at those customers that it's roughly the same price or more efficient to serve with an alternative provider. We move them over, and more expensive customers to serve, we leave with comment on the retail tariff rate. And so in this way, we can generate savings from the activities of some customers without having to take on the costs that would be imposed by others. The problem, of course, is that there's not as much savings as in the golden days of aggregation. The savings, if we just left it with the people generating it, we'd be picking winners and losers. So there's not really a great way to give the money back to ratepayers. As you'll see here, we think it makes the most sense to treat this really as a cash pool. And really what you're talking about is through our entire customer base. Right now we're estimating somewhere in the neighborhood of just under $13,000 a year you could generate savings off of. Of course, if you look at all the members of our consortium, that's getting close to, creeping up towards $500,000 a year. And as we'll talk about in the next slide, in the aggregate, even at a small scale, that has a lot of impacts. What we're talking about, proposing doing, no need to make a decision tonight, is that we would take this cash pool that's produced from energy activities, right, energy rates, and put it back into energy policy, essentially, by purchasing renewable energy credits. Each kilowatt hour of credit represents a kilowatt hour generated from renewable resources like wind and solar, rather than traditional fossil fuels like coal or natural gas. So in this case, we take that $12,900, we go and buy it at competitive prices, and that supplements the amount of renewable electricity that ComEd already has to provide. On the original slide deck, you saw just the 16% target. I do have to note, courtesy of Mr. Pruitt, that that's actually less being delivered today due to some cost caps. That's actually about 7% that ComEd gives an ordinary ratepayer. So everything we would put in would be over and above that amount. We mentioned in the memo, but I do want to be clear that not every community is taking the savings and applying it in this way. We know some communities are looking at using this cash for other sustainability programs, or I think even as general revenue. Again, we think for some of the planning reasons we talked about, it makes sense perhaps to look at this money this way. And there's a benefit to doing that. So even at our small scale, 10 million or so kilowatt hours, you're talking about, hundreds of thousands of gallons of gasoline, millions of pounds of coal, the electricity usage, not, heat, gas, and electricity, just electricity, to be clear, there's a distinction, but the electricity usage of over 1,000 homes, really big numbers for what is a relatively small program, and that can help us meet some of our strategic planning goals, some of the sustainability goals we talked about. So as was discussed, this is the first public hearing required by law. At your next meeting, we will be able to conduct a second public hearing and take some of these procedural actions. And then the first quarter of 2021, we're hoping to have back RFP results. We'll see what exactly the pricing is when it comes to some of those estimates I presented. And then we can make some of the village's decisions about if it makes sense to pursue this program, and also what those funds could be put to use towards. So, happy to answer your questions.
Glenn, how does this connect or weave with the North Shore Community Solar Program that the village is also involved with?
Certainly. So that is a product of the same working group, the same set of municipalities. We work on other energy matters, including the solar program. So in this case, participants in that program who have been on the wait list, who have actually are receiving community solar credits, they would be left on the ComEd tariff. It makes the most sense to leave them there and to preserve that relationship because their discount is calculated as a percentage of the ComEd rate. The value of their credit is based on the ComEd rate and so on. So they wouldn't be adversely affected. We would perhaps lose some participants in aggregation by people who made that choice. And so that may affect the numbers one way or another, but really they interact with each other, but they don't interfere with each other too much.
So it's not like this is an additive program on top of that. So if you've opted into the MC squared program, then this would not be additive. This is another alternative, kind of.
Yeah. So whether you
Mark is nodding his head, so he's agreeing with us.
Mark, do you have anything to add to that?
No, the only addition is, yes, you're correct. This is another option. One thing that the NSDAC and Glenn has been in many meetings when we've spoken about this is that there needs to be a level of management to ensure that the aggregation does not intrude or somehow cancel out the benefit of community solar. So if you do find an aggregation supplier, then you're just going to need to ensure that they manage the portfolio correctly and that they don't move those community solar projects around, or those community solar accounts around. But that's all very manageable. We've seen this work in some other communities, Oak Park being a good example. And we have a management methodology that can prevent that type of error and prevent confusion for the ratepayers.
Very good.
I had a question about that last slide, which talked about the renewable energy credit impact. In the column for Lake Bluff, it says 1,261 homes, the annual electricity usage by, that estimated quantity. And I'm trying to see, how does that bump up against how Lake Bluff, we have 2,000 roughly homes, how that renewable energy credit impact can be so large, given that we only have 2,000-ish homes.
Sure. So important to remember, and I think Mark can speak to that a little bit more cohesively than I, but important to remember that Lake Bluff isn't just neighborhoods. We have a number of very, high power demand industries here in town as well. For example, CLC Jawa's raw water refining plant would be included in that denominator of our total electricity demand.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I was just trying to put it logically together, and it just didn't compute. So thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else?
I guess I just had a quick question about the cash pool, and Glenn, maybe you would have some understanding on like how we would allocate that, or how we would determine where that would be allocated to, and what kind of programs you would see us using that for.
Sure. So when the members of the NSEAC, this working group, looked at this model, the idea was to allocate that towards, the model was to allocate that towards these renewable energy credits, both because, you get a lot of bang for your buck. There's a tight relationship between the source of funds and the use of funds. There's some other advantages to that as well. I'm sure there are alternatives you can look at as far as the village's local needs for how you could spend those funds, but especially at that small dollar amount, it's hard to divvy that up too much and still be able to make an impact. Trustee
Marquis, as an example, one of the other members of the North Shore the consortium, Highland Park has opted to use those monies for local sustainability initiatives. So the idea of like, if there's other activities that their sustainability committee is working on or commission's working on, they would use those dollars and earmark those dollars to support those activities as a new source of revenue, if you will, as opposed to taking monies from the general fund. In these difficult economic times or unknown economic times, they're looking for other sources of revenue, and this is one that essentially is found money, if you will, that they can use and offset prior expenses out of the general fund, which would include, I mean, the Village of Lake Bluff's Sustainability Committee doesn't have a specific budget, but over the years they've recommended a number of programs, whether it be additional bike racks throughout the community or more recycling canisters throughout the community, to the village investing more in removing of invasive species. You know, just the idea of those projects go on and on. Certainly can outspend the 12.9 in a heartbeat.
Of course.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting point. And as much as I do love the idea of purchasing renewable energy credits with that money, I think we might be able to have a more visible impact if we do designate some of those funds towards projects that apparently like Highland Park is. I think even $12,000 can go a long way towards some impactful upgrades to the village, whether it's, like you said, bike racks, or even working towards divesting our own equipment from fossil fuels and into battery-operated leaf blowers, for example. So I think we can do. I love the idea of the program. I like the idea of renewable energy credits, but I think we could make a more meaningful impact by doing something more visible and local.
And you don't have to decide that today. This is one of the first hearings, but certainly appreciate the conversation.
Right. I guess that's what I was going to ask. Is that something this board would decide later if we go in this direction and do the aggregation 2.0, then does that come back to the board and we have some sort of discussion about how we would utilize those funds?
Yes, you can go, Glenn, go back to the timeline slide. So as an example, I don't think there's any requirement of law, Peter, that we do this decision as part of this public hearing. And I don't know where exactly that would fall. And maybe, Glenn, you know where that would fall as far as timing of where that would fall. Does it have to go in the operation in the POGO or any of those documents?
My understanding, and Mark, please jump in if we're wrong, but that how those funds are allocated and spent is really an ongoing directive of ours. We can change it when we want to. I think the only component of the RFP that matters is if we choose to spend it on renewable energy credits. The provider we select through the RFP would be obligated basically to help us spend the money to place orders for RECs and to have them fulfilled.
I agree
So
with
would that
that.
then limit our, I guess, ability to have other bidders if we decide that renewable energy credits is not what we want to use the money on?
Mark, would you take that?
Sure. To just touch on a few of the issues that you all have identified here, the use of these funds is technically a function of your supply agreement with the ultimate supplier. So that decision can be pushed down towards the Q1 2021 timeframe. Your decisions relative to the plan of governance are really to give your municipality the option of entertaining this type of an offer alongside the standard municipal aggregation offers that you've received in the past. So what we're really doing is amending that plan of operations and governance, which is your manual, your program manual, and we are trying to insert allowable language that allows you to entertain this option. So that's kind of the process. In terms of whether you need to designate that some process for allocations of any funding, I leave that to council because that sounds like an issue of law and internal process for the municipality. for the other municipalities that we have done this with, and there's about 60 in ComEd now that are using this structure. Most of them that have put some language to direct the use of the funds have inserted that language in their in an ordinance to move alongside the plan of operations and governance. So I hope I haven't complicated things, but I just wanted to delineate that the plan of operations and governance, the purpose for the hearing today is just to amend that plan to allow you to entertain this new type of offer. Doesn't obligate you to take it, just gives you the option to entertain it. And then in terms of how that money is really used, my sense is that that's a question for the contract that you eventually enter into with your supplier at that later date in the first quarter of 2020.
Mark, in your experience with those 60 communities, is Highland Park an anomaly? Do most of these communities do renewable energy credits, or is it a mix?
It's really a mix. From what we've discovered with the supplier community is that they're agnostic. For them, we're negotiating, in essence, a rebate. And for them, a dollar in cash is the same as if they converted that dollar into a renewable energy credit. So they're agnostic. As Glenn mentioned, we'd like to have them prepared to execute for the purchase of renewable energy credits because we find that retailers are a little bit more nimble in making those purchases and can get a slightly better price than trying to do it bilaterally. But outside of that, all the decisions with regard to 50% go to RECs or 100% to RECs, I haven't been able to discern a pattern. I really haven't. I think it's guided by priority and opportunities.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments by trustees? All right. Hearing none, I would assume that this is at least closes this public hearing until December 14th. Is that correct, Drew?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And thank you, Mark, for participating. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
All
Mark.
right. Thank you. We'll now go back to the regular lineup. And we are now at number 11. Oh, it's rock salt time again. All right, this is a resolution approving the purchase of rock salt for the purpose of snow and ice removal, and this will be from CARGILL Incorporated. This is again through the State of Illinois Joint State Procurement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Stewart, and do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Charlot. The village's FY 2021 budget includes $50,000 for the purchase of rock salt for ice and snow control operations. Excuse me. Annually, the State of Illinois Office of Central Management Services conducts the joint procurement of rock salt for roadway maintenance agencies statewide in which the village participates. This year, approved bid of $49.40 per ton was awarded to CARGILL Incorporated of North Olmsted, Ohio. This year's price reflects a 47% decrease in price per ton. At this price, the village will be able to purchase approximately 500 tons of rock salt for $24,700. The village must commit to purchase 100% of the order, and the supplier commits to provide 120% of the ordered amount as the bid price if severe weather conditions arise. Last year's price per ton was $94.47, with the village's salt usage totaling 400 tons due to a below average winter. The village currently has approximately 750 tons left over from last season. With the purchase of 500 more tons of salt, the village will be able to adequately cover our winter season. This year's decrease in price can be attributed to the fact that portions of the U.S. experienced lighter winters, leaving higher supplies and decreasing demand in those areas. Are there any questions for Drew or Jake or anybody? Regis?
Yes, this year is a La Nina. You will see snow on the Rockies right now and toward Alaska. So we have 1,200 or 1,300 somewhere there, tons of salt. Will that be enough, do you think? Given that the weather will be a lot more snow abundant, we think?
Honestly, I don't put a lot of value in future, like winter forecasts like that. I just play it as it comes. But in the past 15 years, I don't think we've ever gone over 1,000 tons. Maybe one time, because the winter dragged on and on and on. Like it started mid-November and it didn't seem to end until March. But 1,000 tons has been like our mark for as long as I've been doing this, and has always been where we've settled in, and it's always worked out well for us.
Again, this is 2020, right?
Yeah. Well, hopefully we turn the corner before it gets bad. But I guess to supplement what Jake said, in the almost 13 years that I've been with the village, we've never run out of salt. We came close in one year and we started cutting it with sand to stretch it. But that's as close as we've come.
Thank you.
You know, Regent, after asking that same question now for 8 years, and I'm sure Jake was really prepared to entertain that. I'm excited to pass this question, to pass the torch to you in future meetings of the Board of Trustees. And Jake, it's been a real great experience.
Thank you, Mark. So much. Mark, you got to remember, if we have another light winter, we're going to need a place to store salt, so we might have to bring it, put a pile in your driveway for the summer. That'll work.
Okay.
You know, there's some interference. I think I've got Wi-Fi problems, Jake. We'll talk about that later.
Good.
All right. Any other pearly words of wisdom from the group on this? So I've heard from Farmer's Almanac it's supposed to be a mild winter, but who knows? We shall see. All right. We have item number 12, which is a public hearing regarding
I'm sorry, Madam. We did a roll call vote for that.
We haven't done the roll. I apologize. We haven't voted on this. Please. Okay. Madam Clerk, could we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Trustee Charlo.
Aye.
Trustee Dewart.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
Okay, we will now go to item 12, which is the public hearing regarding the year 2020 property tax levy. Village of Lake Bluff, in keeping with past practice, will conduct a public hearing on the proposed 2020 property tax levy. Finance Director O'Connell will present information on the Finances Committee tax levy recommendation. The hearing notice was published on the Lake Forester November 9th, 2020, and on the village's website on November 10th. All right. I will turn this over now to Director O'Connell.
Yeah. Glenn, can you turn screen share on for me? Thank you. Good evening, Madam President and trustees. Thank you for allowing me the time to present information on the 2020 property tax levy. This levy presentation is for the property tax bills that will be sent to property owners in May 2021. When Illinois became a state in 1818, the Constitution contained a provision for taxing property in direct proportion to the value of property. From 1818 to 1930, amendments to the Constitution provided the state with various powers and authorities concerning property tax. The last year the state levied taxes was 1930, and since then property taxes have been levied at the local level. In order to collect property tax, the government agencies in the state of Illinois are required to establish a tax levy, and the tax levy is a projecting of monies the government agencies obtain through the annual property tax. Village Board adopts the property tax levy by ordinance and files the ordinance with the Lake County Clerk by the last Tuesday in December. The funds identified in the tax levy and collected through property taxes are utilized by the village along with other revenue sources to fund village budgets. The tax levy ordinance adopted by the village is filed with the Lake County Clerk, who then determines the tax rate needed to raise the dollars. The village levies in dollars rather than a specific tax rate, and as a result does not receive any additional dollars if the assessed valuation of property in the village increases or decreases once the extension has been made. Rather, the amount of village tax levy remains the same and is spread over a greater or lesser total assessed valuation of property. The 2020 total equalized assessed valuation has decreased from the prior year. This graphic illustrates the tax cycle, and as a home rule community, the village is not subject to Property Tax Limitation Act PTEL. However, a resolution was passed in 2005 committing the village abide by the PTEL limit. This means that any increase greater than 5% or CPI, whichever is less, from a prior year request would require a public hearing for approval. Taxing districts determine the amount of money estimated, and an estimate of taxes to be levied in the form of a levy ordinance must be prepared not less than 20 days prior to the adoption of the ordinance. In conjunction with this, there's an assessment process. The township assessor calculates the assessed value of property. Annually, the Lake County Chief Assessor determines the level of assessment in each township based on a prior 3 year sales transactions. Equalization of assessed values is important and performed at each level of government, township, county, and state. The goal of equalization is to bring the 3 year average of medium assessment levels to 33.33% of market value. And the levy cycle includes, on the municipal side, budget prep, budget notice hearing, budget ordinance approvals, publish a tax levy request, tax levy certification to the county in December, while the township assessor determines property value, assessment notices are mailed, board of review hearings are held, county clerk calculates the tax rate based on the levy requests, and the county treasurer mails the tax bills. Taxing districts levy for a higher amount in order to capture any new growth within their district boundaries. So how are our dollars used? The village portion of the tax bill is 9%, while remaining taxing bodies range from as high as 42% to as low as 1%. This chart shows the assessed value by class for the past 10 years, along with the tax extension over the same period, while comparing the correlation to EAV. It includes the library extension. And the slope of the orange line at the top shows the total EAV peaked prior to 2010 and declined by 25% through 2018. The 2020 estimated EAV has also declined from 2019. What changes in EAV? Well, market value, income generating capacity for current properties, and new construction or annexation added to the tax rolls. The village has had no annexation of property since 1998, when the sanctuary subdivision became part of the municipal boundaries. The total levy for 2020 is $4,476,317 compared to the prior year, $4,449,518. The consumer price index factor was 2.3, and estimated new construction from the county was 2.3 million. The total EAV estimated to decrease by 0.72%, and 0.06% is the increase from 2019. The village has several financial policies which guide the preparation of the tax levy and the budget, allowing the village to proactively seek solutions to change revenue streams. Some of the most important significant practices are to balance revenue sources between taxes, user fees, and other sources to reduce the reliance on any one source, to be prudent in the expenditure of funds, and to maintain adequate operational reserves. CPI being 2.3% compared to last year's 1.9%, had we utilizing full CPI would have generated an additional $120,729 in potential new revenue. However, after review of levy estimates and financial projections, the village board decided to freeze the village portion of the extension, requesting the same amount as in 2019. The 2020 village portion of $3,461,807 represents no increase over the 29 property tax extension. The Lake Bluff Library Board has requested a property tax levy of $1,014,510 for the 2020 year, providing $26,799 in new revenue. This is a 2.713% increase over the previous year. The total levy amount of $4,476,317 is in compliance with the Property Tax Limitations Act. Levies are made in dollar amounts, and to raise the money requested in levies, county clerks must calculate a tax rate for each fund levied. The tax rate is a number that, when multiplied by the tax base, will produce the levy amount. This slide itemizes the various components of the levy, their respective amounts, and the resulting rates. This chart shows the levy by purpose. However, it's important to note that the levy does not fully fund these functions. The village relies on multiple sources of revenue, such as sales and other taxes, building permits, and other use fees, and license and fines to cover the costs of providing services. The pensions levy represents 27% of the total levy, which is over $1 million of the $4.4 million total levy. Long-term budget considerations are an important part of financial planning. And after considering the volatility of this recovery and uncertainty regarding some state-shared revenue sources, we continue to consider sales tax revenue that's heavily reliant on auto sales, future amounts of state-shared revenue sources that remain uncertain, changing grant funds, and lower or negative investment returns that require larger police pension and IMRA fund contributions. Some prior actions to maintain financial stability have included reduced personnel from 50 to 35 employees over the past 7 years, outsourced household waste collection, municipal partnering for dispatch operations, strategically invested in technology, infrastructure, and services to improve system security, reliability, and staff productivity. We've facilitated commercial development opportunities with Target and Heinens, and the village continues to consider cost reductions while pursuing efficiencies and utilization of resources. So what's the impact on a median home market value, which is $626,300? What's the impact to the average homeowner? As you review the impact of this levy on a home worth $626,300, it's important to note that the effective rate is based on the total actual EAV. The current EAV numbers are projections as provided by the Lake County Assessor, and they have declined. The impact on a home that has a median market value of $626,300, assuming the estimated change in EAV from 2019 to 2020, and realizing a hold on the village portion of the extension, would mean a change of about $15.52. This includes the library's increase and also a decrease based in the calculation due to decreasing property values, or EAV. Compared to other communities, the village's tax rate remains lower than most, and subsequently the tax amount for a $626,300 median market value home is lower in comparison to most neighboring communities. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Anyone? Questions, comments? Thank you, Bettina.
You're welcome.
Good job of look for any questions. All right. I believe at this point, Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, that this would conclude our hearing.
It's a public hearing that you can close.
All right.
There doesn't appear to be any comments from anybody attending the meeting.
From anyone else? Okay.
No.
Then I hereby close this hearing for this one. And all right, close the hearing, and we will go on now to number 13, which is an ordinance levying property taxes for the fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2020, and ending April 30th, 2021 for the village of Lake Bluff, County. This is a first reading approval of the ordinance. So do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved, and that was Ms. Markey, or Ms. McMahon, I'm sorry. And a second, please.
Second.
Second by Ms. Markey. Pursuant to state law, on or before the last Tuesday in December, the village must file with the county clerk an ordinance requesting a property tax to be levied on all taxable property within the village. After review of levy estimates and financial projections as presented by staff, the Finance Committee recommends that the village freeze the village portion of the extension to the same amount as in the year 2019. The 2020 levy amount of $3,461,807 represents no increase over the 2019 property tax extension. The Lake Bluff Public Library Board has requested a property tax levy of $1,014,510 for the year 2020, which is a 2.713 increase over the previous year. The total levy amount of $4,476,317 is in compliance with the Property Tax Limitations Act, and the Truth in Taxation Act was not required for this levy. Are there any comments or questions on this? All right, roll call vote. This is first reading.
Trustee Sherlow.
Aye.
Trustee Dewart.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
We now move on to item 14, which is an ordinance abating the 2020 property taxes levied for general obligation debt series 2019 and 2019 A bonds of the village of Lake Bluff, Illinois. This again is a first reading approval. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Ankerman. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Mr. Charlot. The village currently has refunded bond series 2012, 2019, and 2019A general obligations, GO bonds outstanding. Refunding bond series 2012's final payment will be made in FY 2021. Therefore, it is excluded. Pursuant to Ordinance 2019-18 and 2019-26, the county clerk is required to extend a property tax levy in an amount sufficient to pay the interest and principal on the bonds. In the past, the village has abated the annual property tax levy. Because the bond ordinance directing extensions of the annual property tax levy were filed with the county clerk, an ordinance is required to abate, not levy, the property tax for these bonds. The finance director determined that the Waterworks Fund has the amount necessary to transfer to the Waterworks Bonds and interest account for principal and interest payments on the 2019 general obligation bonds and the 2019A refunding bonds. The final payment for the 2012 refunding bond principal and interest will be made in FY 2021, will be paid by general fund revenues. Are there any questions or comments by the trustees? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Dewart.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Trustee Sherlow.
Aye.
Agenda item number 15, which is a resolution authorizing change order number 1 to the Construction Engineering Services Agreement for the Moffett Road Bridge Repair and Resurfacing Project. Do I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dewart. Second.
Second.
Second, that was,
Mr. Toll.
I'm sorry. Mr. Toll, right to his hand. On March 12, 2018, the village board authorized the Moffett Road Repair and Resurfacing Project and approved a construction engineering service agreement with Baxter and Woodman for an estimated fee of $94,488.46. Under the terms of the village's agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation, so fondly called IDOT, 80% of the fees paid to Baxter and Woodman would be reimbursed by IDOT for a net cost to the village of $18,937.69. However, several issues were encountered during construction that required additional engineering services by Baxter and Woodman, which increased the cost of these services by $45,311.54, including but not limited to the following. IDOT changed their policy on the need for soil testing between the time IDOT approved the plans for construction and when construction began. The need for additional testing delayed the completion date of the project from the fall of 2018 to the summer of 2019. The contractor improperly installed the culvert liner on the 96-foot culvert under the Moffett Road, under Moffett Road between Crescent Drive and East Witchwood Lane. Several meetings and field visits were required to come to an agreement on a plan to repair the defects. Additional inspection was required of the repairs, and the project completion was further delayed. IDOT personnel approved plans for the ravine restoration that were not specified on the restoration plan and were not native. Baxter and Woodman pointed out to IDOT and the contractor that they were the wrong plans, but the contractor installed them anyway. Additional time and expense were incurred in convincing IDOT that they needed to be replaced and inspecting the work in replanting the area. If the change order is approved, the village will pay Baxter and Woodman $45,311.54 and then submit for reimbursement from IDOT for 80% of that sum under the terms of our agreement. The net cost to the village of the change order will be $9,062.31. The overall net project cost to the village will remain within the $250,000 that was originally budgeted for the project in FY19. In accordance with the village's purchasing policy, a change order of this amount requires the approval of the village board. The village engineer recommends the village board approve the change order to the construction engineering services with Baxter and Woodman for the increase in services required during the Moffett Road Bridge repair and resurfacing project. Does anyone have a comment or a question? Okay.
It's indeed disappointing that we have to reimburse for problems largely created by IDOT, and I just find it disappointing that we're on the hook for having to pay 20% of that. I just go on record as offering my disappointment with that.
I think probably we all share that extreme disappointment that something like this did not have to occur. The delays, the things, and the installation of the wrong types of plants. Anybody else have anything they would like to add? Okay, all righty. Roll call, please.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Trustee Sherlow.
Aye.
Trustee Dewart.
Aye.
All right. Item 16, which is a resolution authorizing the execution of a construction contract with DK Contractors for the Lakeland Lift Station Rehabilitation Project. Do I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Charlot. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Markey. At 12:30 p.m. on Wednesday, November 18, 2020, the Village of Lake Bluff opened bids for the Lakeland Lift Station Rehabilitation Project. 5 bids were received with the lowest responsive bid of $167,628.40, submitted by DK Construction Company of Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. The project includes replacing the existing pumps, piping, valves, and control system at the sanitary lift station located on Lakeland Drive. The project will improve the reliability of the lift station, which has had significant issues in recent years. The village's FY21 budget includes $220,000 for lift station improvements, of which $29,000 has been expended on professional services for the engineering and bidding of the project. The remaining $191,000 of the budget is approximately $23,000 more than the low bid amount. The village intends to hire the project design engineer HLR Inc. to perform construction engineering services with a portion of the remaining budget. Village engineer is recommending the award of the contract to the construction of the Lakeland Lift Station Rehabilitation Project to the low bidder, DK Construction, in the bid amount $167,628.40. Any comments, questions from the trustees? All right, roll call, please.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Trustee Sherlock.
Aye.
Trustee Stewart.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye. All righty, we have agenda item 18, which is an ordinance granting a special use permit to Two Paws Up Dog Training Incorporated to operate a dog training business in the village's L1 Light Industry Zone, 926 North Shore Drive. This would be first reading approval, and could I have a motion, please, for this?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Meyer. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Ankerman. On October 22nd, the Village of Lake Bluff received a zoning relief application from Two Paws Up Dog Training Incorporated to allow a dog training business to operate in the L1 Light Industry District. The applicant previously received a special use permit for the same purpose in September 2019 for a nearby location at 968 North Shore Drive. The dog training services from the applicant's two locations, one outside the village, will be combined at 926 North Shore Drive under the current proposal, which requires the issuance of a new special use permit. At its November 18, 2020 virtual meeting, the PCZBA conducted a public hearing, unanimously recommend the village board grant the requested special use permit. The PCZBA's recommendation includes one special condition, which is also applicable to the applicant's current 968 North Shore Drive special use permit. The applicant is prohibited from installing or maintaining outdoor kennels, runs, or other facilities for animals outside of the building. Any questions or comment regarding this? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Toll. Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Trustee Sherlock.
Aye.
Trustee Stewart.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
All right, we're now on to item number 19, which is an ordinance amending the Lake Bluff zoning regulations relating to subterranean garages and spaces. This would be a first reading approval. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Markey, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dewart. Following withdrawal of a recent request to construct a subterranean garage at 541 East Prospect Avenue, the Village Board directed the PCZBA to further review the village's subterranean garage recommendations. After holding public hearings in October and November, the PCZBA unanimously recommended the following zoning code text amendments. Continue to treat subterranean garages as a special use where attached to a single family residence. Delete provisions that prohibit subterranean garages from facing street lot lines. Require safety guards to be provided where the driveway to an underground garage creates a hazardous drop. These are only required under the building code today where a path abuts the drop. This rule would be unique in that it would not apply to drop-offs near ravines, bluffs, etc., pose a similar hazard. Expand the definition of subterranean garages to include garages accessed by exterior lifts or elevators. Exclude multifamily, commercial, and industrial underground garages from these regulations. These properties are subject to site plan review. Clarify that underground structures cannot encroach into required yards. As described in the attached memorandum, the PCCBA considered but ultimately did not recommend establishing subterranean garages as either a permitted or prohibited use in some or all zoning districts. Requiring an engineer to certify that a design will not flood during a 100-year storm. Establishing slope limits on the driveway leading to a subterranean garage. Requiring the owner and subsequent owners to sign a release regarding flood risks. Design review by the Architectural Review Board. Comments, questions?
Yes.
Charlotte?
I mean, I read that document, and I happen to have lived near two of the houses that were underground garages in Lake Bluff, and I've seen both of these houses flooding. And one of them was next to be condemned because they had about 7 feet of water in the basement. I mean, what I'm afraid here is we actually do not do enough to protect the village of Lake Bluff from being liable to allowing garages to be built like that. I mean, from when I read that list, I would love to have requiring an engineer to certify that the design will not flood. I mean, that there's enough safeguards for that house to be built correctly enough to not flood on the next 100-year storm that will happen next year, by the way. And I'm also, one thing we had discussed a few weeks ago was to sign a release regarding flood risks. We had talked about having that release from the current owner, but not from the next owner, and therefore creating a risk for the village of Lake Bluff. So I'm a little bit disappointed.
Anyone else want to add to that? Or yes, Ms. Marquis.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're still talking about a special use permit, right? So anyone who comes forward and wants to do a subterranean garage, they still have to get a special use permit. So it still has to come in front of us. We're still going to be looking at it.
And they still have to satisfy all those standards, yes.
Right. And so if it came to us and we had questions about where that subterranean garage is being built, let's say it's a low area or flooding, then could we ultimately say, well, we need to see some of the engineering, we need to make sure it's not going to flood. Can we do that as on our
You can add those as additional conditions at the time that you consider those, any special use permit. Those can be added, yes, separately from actually codifying them.
Okay. So it's not that we wouldn't have that opportunity to talk about those things. It's just that it's not actually going to be written in the code.
That is correct.
Okay.
First of all,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish off, Joy.
No, I was just going to say, I think given those parameters, I'm okay with this because it would still come in front of us as a board, and we would discuss it like we did with the house on Prospect, like we just did.
Well, first of all, I want to respect the difficult task that we offered back to the PCCBA to reconsider this, and I know that this was not an easy process for them. I'm personally concerned about subterranean garages, particularly on certain areas of the village which are, the topography is largely at grade. Some areas of the village are not so, and probably are might offer a more acceptable or less risky proposition for something like that. I personally would have preferred a consistent process and a consistent approach to this across the village, much like we talked about a consistent approach earlier this evening. Though I think at the end of the day, perhaps as Ms. Marquis has just pointed out, we're still in the business of a special use permit, which is a process that requires that any proposal, any project go back through PCZBA and come through the village board. The only remaining reservation that I have is that mandating a consistent approach ensures that we as a village board, we as a PCZBA don't miss any of these details, that in some way, shape, or form, if we choose to take a look at some of these items that were not included in the recommendation from the PCZBA, as Mr. Charlot included the release on flood risks and engineering studies and so forth. It doesn't preclude us from doing that, but it does take it out of the consistent approach. And it puts I hesitate to use the word burden, but it puts the onus on the village administration as well as this board to recall these concerns in the future when such projects are presented to us for consideration, that we don't forget, that right now we do, I think, a super job when these kinds of things come forward, and the administration will offer us past history of these kinds of decisions as an attachment or an addendum to these, to remind us where we have been, to refresh our history of these, so that we don't stub our toe again in the future. So I'm willing to support it. I don't think it's perhaps as ideal as it could be. We're trading off consistency for flexibility. And the whole, I'll support it, but a reminder that it does put a burden on us to remember this history and remember the path that we've all, and the journey that we've all taken to get here. So, my thoughts.
One more thought is that it also seems to put more of a burden on the board to know which portions of the village may be more susceptible to flooding, so that if we had it certified that it would not flood within a 100-year storm, that would kind of weed that out in that process. But now, do we need to, when we get a future request, say, let's ask for the village engineer to provide, the flood map and see where it fits in, a little dot on the map and where we've seen historical flooding. I don't know. It just seems, again,
right,
like we're putting the burden on us to say, does it fit this or does it not?
Right.
And, the homeowner is really saying that they will assume the risk, but how many times have we had people who have bought homes or built homes come to us and say, well, we're in this pickle, we're having these big problems, and gee, how did you let this happen, village? So, it's just putting the village in a position where we are potentially going to green light something, and then a future owner will come back and say, I've got this problem, and it's such a big problem that as a single homeowner, I can't fix it by myself. Can you help me? Because, by the way, you let it happen.
Well, hopefully
I think that argument also goes. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was just going to say, hopefully the seriousness with which we're taking care of this today can be reflected on future property owners and architects and engineers as they might consider projects like this again in the future. And so, I'm sorry, Aaron, please.
Well, I was just going to say make a comment on to Barbara's point, in that homeowners need to do their due diligence when they purchase a home. I, for one, would never buy a house with a subterranean garage just for the fact that we've seen them flood. I would also never put one in to a current home because of that same reason. So we have been pointed at as to why we allowed certain houses to be built in certain areas or in certain manners, and that's something that we do have to deal with and we'll always have to deal with. But I think bottom line is that the homeowner takes the responsibility of doing their due diligence before they purchase a home or before they decide to put in a subterranean garage. And I just think that we, as individuals, as residents, have to have some personal responsibility in that as well. And we can't, nor should we, determine what sort of risk our residents are willing to take with their own homes. Having said that, I would love to have a consistent way because we're going to have different faces all the time, and so the expectations may change based on who's sitting on this board. So,
right.
My preference would certainly be for a consistent, whether it's to allow them or to prohibit them. Having a certain set of expectations certainly is valuable.
Anyone else?
Well, I was just going to ask, based on all those comments, do we want to send it back to the PCZBA? Do we want to ask them to change some of the language in it?
I would think that of everything that's been discussed tonight, the one element that was listed in the bulleted items that was not included, that seems to be, at least there seems to be a consensus, or I think there may be a consensus of the board, is to require an engineering design to satisfy the 100-year storm event. I'm hearing that from multiple board members to add that into the list of elements that would be part of this text amendment. But before you do that, Jeff Hansen, would you please talk about that just so the board clearly understands what that would look like? And the language here reads, requiring an engineer to certify that a design will not flood during a 100-year storm. Tell us all what that really means.
Yeah, well, I guess to start off, that's really no different than what we do now. You know, we got the application on Prospect. That was a piece of information we required them to submit just as part of our review before it even came to you. So that's something that is standard, at least on my end, to request from people that are trying to build something like that. Now, there's two ways that the underground garage floods. One is the sump pump in the basement can't keep up, fails, or just otherwise, doesn't get the water out. The other way is water that is not normally flowing down the driveway into the garage gets there, such as the street is flooded and it rises up over the sidewalk or over the curb, and it drains down and it overwhelms the sump pump, or whatever pumping system they have to pump it out. So we ask people, the engineers, to look at it both ways. One is the pump size enough to get on a 100-year storm for all the water that would naturally drain to that spot? And also keep in mind that the 100-year storm was just last year increased. They changed the definition of it to make it about 33% bigger than we had in the past. So we probably, hopefully, will not have it every other year like we have in the past, where we keep having the 100-year storm over and over again. So the other way that these subterranean garages can flood is if there is a swale nearby, they overtops, there's a plugged pipe somewhere, and the street floods and it comes down over, which is what we had most of the large storm in 2017, where we had a couple of those garages flood. That was mostly, I believe, street water that just came over and went down the driveway into the garage. So one thing that, when you build a house in a floodplain or in a flooding area, you usually ask that the lowest elevation of a surface where water can get into the house is like 1 foot above the 100-year storm. So we look for a little bit of, beyond just, we graded this berm just right so the 100-year storm can't overtop and go down into the garage. We want that to be a little higher to leave a little room for air and settling. But that's generally, what we review for any project like that. I don't think adding to the code would really change the procedure on my end.
Jeff, lacking that being part of the code, how do you justify requiring that study from the homeowner, from the architect?
I guess nobody's ever challenged that. You know, if somebody's building a home, I suppose it's not codified. Somebody could say we don't have to, but you know, given that it's a special use, I don't know that we have to approve it.
Okay. The second thing is, you know, the other source of problems, I would imagine, I think all of us have recently completed our fall lawn cleanup, and leaves. We've seen many cases, even in the summer, where leaves have clogged up even our streets and gutters and whatnot. And I think, at least over here in this area, I think I've seen situations where drain grates and whatnot have been clogged by debris as well. And so even despite having sumps and pumping and elevations and whatnot, if the grate is clogged or occluded, the water has nowhere else to go, obviously, but into the structure. Drew, to your point, if we're currently doing if we're currently requiring the study, the other thing that seems to come up is a release to the village regarding flood risks. Is that something, and maybe this is a question for Peter, is that something where village is really at risk to any extent by approving a project and having a flood occur? Is the village vulnerable to suit?
I would say the village is not vulnerable to liability, and somebody can always sue us. But particularly if it's a special use permit, all of those would be accompanied by an unconditional agreement of consent, where the property owner would basically indemnify us and hold us harmless from any liability with regard to our approval. And in addition to that, we would have a statutory immunity from any kind of liability for issuing the permit.
So we'd have statutory protection, and then any document that you would put together for the use would have the hold harmless wording in it as well.
And I think
all the village's special use permits have that agreement.
The one related issue with this, Mark, I'm sorry, the one, if I may, really quickly, the one related issue when we were talking about the most recent petition that came forward was ultimately withdrawn. At the time, the direction of the village board was, is there a way for the village to protect itself after that initial property owner sells the home? Is there a way to transfer that same risk or a release of risk of the village? And right, and Peter had figured out a way to do that, essentially through a transfer assumption agreement attached to the unconditional consent, was a way to handle that. So the answer is yes, there would be a legal vehicle to do that, that would do everything Peter talked about, but it would apply to future owners as well that would pop up at every future transfer of that property, which was another reason why the petitioner withdrew their application, was the idea that would maybe be too much of a red flag for future sales.
Yeah. How do you feel about that, Regis?
That's perfect. That was going to be my next question to Peter. Thank you. I mean, if we manage to engineer that legal terms, that legal language, I would be absolutely fine having that type of liability assumed by that owner and by the next owner, and having the village being safe to that type of liability.
And at the same time, that may reduce the chances of us having to discuss this again.
Exactly.
If we attach that language,
would be
people
nice.
may not bring it to us. So.
I mean,
I
the thing I got,
that. I think that's a great idea.
I think the thing I got stuck with is that we have a special use permit, so we actually put a permit forward, but we do not require an engineer to certify that the design will be okay. And so I was afraid of a liability that could cause to our community right here.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, I would like to see consistency, liability protection if we're going to go down this route. I have major reservations of subterranean drainage with a lot of the parameters and the configurations that we have in our village. I think it's a rabbit hole, but okay. All right, let's go on to the next one, but let's vote on this one. Let's roll call, please.
So can we clarify all the additional conditions? I have it now that it would be everything that was listed by the PCZBA, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 original bullet points there, but in addition to that, requiring the owner and subsequent owners to sign the release reducing or release regarding the flood risk of the future to the village. But it was unclear to me if we wanted to go ahead and include the certification of the design requirements for the 100-year flood event, or if they were comfortable with staff requiring that as part of the petition analysis.
Will that offer protection to Jeff and to the village if someone were to push back?
Most of the time, petitioners are eager to provide drawings if it gets them approved. But it still doesn't hurt to have it as a place that Jeff can point to say, yes, this is where it's required.
Then I'd feel comfortable adding that to the.
It would help with the consistency here.
And I second that.
I'd be fine with that.
As well.
Okay. Did we do the roll call?
Nope.
That, okay.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Trustee Sherlock.
Aye.
Trustee Dewart.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
We now have item 20, which is a resolution authorizing the execution of a construction contract with Copenhagen Construction for the Robert McClory Bike Path Bridge Replacement Project. I have a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, so moved by, was that Ms. Ankerman, and then seconded by Mr. Toll. The village has been planning the reconstruction of the Robert McClory pedestrian bridge since 2012. Thanks to State Senator Julie Morrison, the village successfully secured $87,600 of grant funding for a portion of the project from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. The village also found a partner with Lake County Department of Transportation to help fund the replacement of the bridge, and an IGA was approved on January 28, 2019, prescribing the county's participation in the project. Unfortunately, the progress of this bridge replacement has been hindered by a number of issues, including an extensive design approval and permitting process with IDOT. For a period of time during Governor Rauner's administration, the grant was placed on hold, and only recently has the village been advised by the IDNR that the grant monies will be provided as originally planned. Further complicating matters, the recent bidding process yielded 3 bidders and a low bid of $308,266.20, which is $80,000 over the estimate on which the project budget was based. Because the bridge is experiencing structural issues, staff is recommending allocating additional funds to the project and awarding a construction contract to the lowest bidder, Copenhagen Construction of Gilbert, Illinois, in the amount of $308,266.20. This would require a budget amendment for the total project cost of $330,000, including construction engineering. The village's general fund has adequate funds for this amendment. The village has an existing agreement with Lake County to reimburse the village for up to $100,000 of the cost, with Lake County is presently considering our request to add an additional $50,000 to their commitment. Staff is also finalizing an extension of the IDNR grant of $87,600. With the additional commitment from Lake County and the IDNR grant extension, net cost to the village's general fund would be $141,200. If some of the funding from the village's project partners does not materialize, recently received non-program Build Illinois funds could be used to fill the gap. Village engineer is recommending the award of a contract for the construction of the McClory Bike Path Bridge project to Copenhagen Construction in the amount bid of $308,266.20. Good for comments and questions.
I had just one comment, Madam President.
Original...
Go ahead.
Go right ahead, yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that there is some risk to the village that the state grant may not come through, although we think it will based off the most recent communications of late last week, and that there is a risk that the county won't be able to allocate the additional funds, although we've heard and via email communications from their staff that they didn't think there'd be a reason why they wouldn't do that. So there is some risk that the village could be on the hook for 70% of this project. But we are optimistic that that will not be the case, that the state and the county will come through and share the cost at the same levels as previously planned. But I just wanted to make that clear. There is some risk that may occur.
Okay, Mark, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, the net cost is $141,200. What was the original net?
It was closer to 100,000.
Okay.
Mr. Charlo?
Thank you. I have also a question that is, I think I understand that this bridge is not urgent maybe, but in need of quick repairs. And also that it might be difficult to find the material of the elements to remake this bridge. What is our urgency, if I can ask, from our village engineer?
Yeah, there's no danger right now that the bridge is going to collapse. We had a piece of concrete fall off the bridge onto the roadway in the winter, either late 2018 or early 2019. And basically the water is seeping in through the top into the concrete and freezing and causing problems. So it's deteriorating from water seepage, and that's why a piece of the bottom ended up kind of popping off, was because water got all the way towards the bottom and froze. And there is another piece following the one that fell off that could fall off. We've taken off a little extra back in 2019 to stop the piece that was hanging. But it does continue to deteriorate. That bridge, I believe, was built in 1975. They have about a 40-year life. So we're a little beyond that right now. So there is an urgency. I would think in the next 5 years it needs to be replaced to feel safe.
Thank you.
Do we, in the spirit of Wrigley Field, do we need to put some netting or other materials in there to protect motorists or pedestrians from having material fall from the bridge?
I don't see that need right now because there's not a piece hanging. The one that fell, you never really noticed it until, oh yeah, that fell, but it was kind of hanging off and separating itself over time.
Mm-hmm.
So I look up every time I drive under that bridge to see what it looks like, and if there's another piece that's coming off,
yeah.
Public Works could take a truck down there and keep removing, preemptively, but we haven't had the need to do that in the past year and a half.
I'm glad my convertible is put away for the winter.
Mine's not.
Well, I think that just speaks to the need to do it sooner than later. And certainly this project has stretched itself for almost a decade out through countless board meetings. I think it would be worth it to accomplish this long-time goal.
What's the project timeline for this?
As we bid it, we asked for it to be done by the end of the fiscal year, at the end of April. There's a chance that material delays in getting the precast deck beams could push that into May or June, but it should be done before the 4th of July for sure.
Well, why don't we proceed?
One last question. That project would, how long would the bridge be totally out of commission?
The contract allows for 60 days.
60 days. Okay.
And we would reroute the pedestrian and the trail users through our downtown on our pathway. We bring them in around through the CBD, out and around towards the train station, back north and south.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do a roll call.
Trustee Sherlock.
Aye.
Trustee Dort.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman.
All right. Do we have a trustees report for this evening?
Yes, please. I would like to highlight the work of Vote Lake Bluff for this past weekend. Vote Lake Bluff, the goal is to expose the various government needs, board needs with volunteers in our community. And the last event was about sitting positions for the April 6th consolidated election. The candidacies were for village boards, school board, park district boards, and I believe the library, I think. I would like to thank, they did an excellent job. I would like to thank Neil Dahlman, Tom Pinch, Janice Snowbridge, Robin Huzak, Jill Rosa, Dave Anderson, John Josephitis, Paul Balahunta, Ralph Bishop, and our dear village president, who was a notary at this event. Thank you very much.
Yes, it actually, I thought, worked out very well, very efficient, and we didn't have any rain. That was good. All right. Is there anybody else that has anything they'd like to add for this evening? All righty. I don't believe we're going to have executive session tonight. So I wish everybody a very, very happy Thanksgiving and safe one with your families. And could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Marquis. And a second. Was that Mr. Toll? Okay. All righty. I think we could just do an all in favor.
Aye.
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 Okay. Everybody stay safe. Thank you all.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Nice, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.